The Gulf of Mexico shimmered under a brutal August sun, the air thick with salt and diesel fumes. Mike Hawkins stood on the deck of the Neptune's Fury, a hulking oil rig 200 miles off the Louisiana coast. At 38, Hawk was a roughneck through and through, broad shoulders, callous hands, and a stare that could make a man rethink his choices. He'd spent 15 years on rigs like this, wrestling pipe, dodging blowouts, and living for the next paycheck. But something about this job felt wrong, like a storm brewing beneath a clear sky. The Neptune's Fury was no ordinary rig. It was a deep-sea beast, drilling into a pocket the geologists called the Devil's Cauldron, a reservoir so deep it made the engineers nervous. The crew whispered about it at night over poker and cheap whiskey. Strange readings, equipment failures, and a sonar glitch that showed something moving down there bigger than any whale. Hawk didn't buy into ghost stories, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that the rig was cursed. It started at 0300 hours. Hawk was in the control room, sipping coffee that tasted like motor oil when an alarm screamed. The pressure gauges for the drill were spiking, redlining into the danger zone. "Shut it down," yelled the shift supervisor, a wiry Texan named Cal. Hawk bolted for the drill floor, his boots pounding the steel grating. The rig shook, a low rumble rising from below like the growl of some ancient beast. "Kill the pumps," Hawk shouted, but the crew was already scrambling. Sparks flew from a valve, and a pipe wrench the size of a man's arm shot across the deck, narrowly missing Hawk's head. He grabbed a radio, barking orders to the mud engineer to check the blowout preventer. The response was static. Then a scream cut short. Hawk sprinted to the lower deck, where the mud pits churned like a witch's brew. He found the engineer, or what was left of him. The man's body was slumped against a bulkhead, his chest caved in like he'd been hit by a truck. But there was no blood, no marks, just a faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising off asphalt. Hawks got twisted. He'd seen men die on rigs before, falls, explosions, bad luck, but nothing like this. He grabbed his toolkit and a flare gun, the only weapon he could think of. The rig was shaking harder now, the steel groaning under some unseen force. The lights flickered, plunging the deck into darkness before the backups kicked in. Hawk heard shouts from above, then gunfire. Gunfire? Nobody carried on a rig. He climbed the stairs two at a time, emerging into chaos. The crew was firing at something, a shape that moved too fast, darting between the derrick's shadows. It wasn't human, wasn't animal. It was big, maybe 10 feet tall, its body a mix of sleek metal and something organic, like muscle fuse of machine. Its limbs bent wrong, and its eyes, if you could call them that, glowed a sickly green. Bullets sparked off its hide, doing nothing but drawing its attention. Get to the lifeboats. Hawk roared, but the thing was already on them. It moved like liquid, snatching a roughneck named Ortiz and vanishing into the dark. The crew scattered, panic taking over. Hawk grabbed Cal, who was frozen, staring at where Ortiz had been. "What the hell is that thing?" Cal whispered. "No clue," Hawk said, "but we're not dying out here." He dragged Cal toward the control room, where the rig schematics were stored. If they could overload the drill's pressure system, maybe they could blow the thing back to whatever hell it came from. But the radio crackled with a new voice, not human, not even close. It was a low, guttural hum, forming words that made Hawk's skin crawl. "You open the door. Now we come." Hawk's mind raced. The Devil's Cauldron. The drill had hit something at 30,000 feet, something the geologists couldn't explain. Had they punched through what? Another world? A prison? He didn't have time to think. The thing was back, its shadow filling the corridor. Hawk fired the flare gun, the magnesium blaze catching it square in the chest. It screeched, a sound that felt like nails in his brain, and recoiled just enough for them to slip past. In the control room, Hawk pulled up the schematics on a flickering monitor. The blowout preventer was offline, sabotaged. The only option was emergency override, a manual valve on the drill floor that could flood the well with cement, sealing it shut. But it was a one-way trip. Whoever turned that valve wasn't coming back. "I'll do it," Hawk said, cutting off Cal's protest. He grabbed a wrench and a flashlight, then ran for the drill floor. The rig was a maze of pipes and shadows, the air thick with the stench of oil and something metallic, like blood. The thing was hunting, its footsteps shaking the deck. Hawk moved fast, staying low, his heart pounding like a jackhammer. He reached the valve, a massive wheel crusted with salt and grime. It wouldn't budge. He threw his weight into it, muscles burning, as the thing's shadow loomed behind him. "Come on, you bastard," he growled, giving it everything he had. The valve screeched, turning inch by inch. A pipe burst nearby, spraying mud and oil, but Hawk kept going. The creature lunged, its claw grazing his shoulder, tearing through his jacket like paper. Pain seared through him, but he didn't stop. With final heave, the valve locked into place. The rig shuddered as cement pumped into the well, sealing the cauldron. The creature screamed, its body flickering like a bad signal, then collapsed into a pile of ash and metal. Hawk stumbled back, blood soaking his shirt. The rig was still shaking, but the alarms had stopped. He made it to the lifeboat bay, where Cal and a handful of survivors were waiting. They launched into the Gulf, the Neptune's fury burning behind them, a funeral pyre against the dawn. Back on shore, the feds were waiting. They took Hawk's statement, then told him to forget what he'd seen. National security, they said, but Hawk wasn't the forgetting type. He kept a piece of the creature's metal, hidden in his duffel, a reminder that the world was bigger and darker than anyone wanted to admit. As he drove his old F-150 toward the horizon, the radio played a news report about the rig's accident. Hawk turned it off, lit a cigarette, and muttered, "Let him try to bury this one." The road stretched ahead, and somewhere deep in the Gulf, the Cauldron waited.